Rece, what is the mood here as you guys arrive for yet another game day stop? You've been to a lot of big venues already. How does this venue strike you?
Well, I mean, I think when you've won as much as Georgia has and they're on the roll and establishing maybe an unprecedented dynasty in the modern era of college football, I know we go back to Minnesota having won 3 in a row, but the last year that Minnesota won the championship was the first year of the AP poll. So basically, this is unprecedented what Georgia's trying to do. So I think that, every game's huge. Oddly, because of the way the season's shaking out at this point, they've got zero margin for error. I mean, they might still make it with a loss, but they put themselves in harm's way right now. So even with all they've accomplished and all the equity they've built, there's still the feeling that they kind of have to win out. So it's great. We always have this is a great scene here on Myers Quad. The fans and the students are always great. So we're excited to be here.
Brock Bowers is a different kind of star. We haven't seen a tight end with this profile before, and there's some thought that he might actually play with this tightrope surgery being a quick healing process. Your thoughts on what Brock has meant to college football and what his presence would mean Saturday night?
He's an amazing athlete. He's so versatile. He can line up as a wide receiver. He can line up as a running back. He's got great hands. He's a clutch player. Other than that, I don't really like him much. But he is one of the best players in recent years. And I think what separates Brock from some of the other great tight ends that we've seen, in the last 25, 30 years, as I start to show how old I am, is I don't remember any other tight end that they just handed the ball to, as often as they do Brock. And, you've seen tight ends who can line up and flex out in a slot, who almost function as wide receivers, seen guys with size and hands, but he's kind of almost like a hybrid tight end, wide receiver, slot back, running back. I don't know if he can throw, but I'll bet he can because he can pretty much do everything. So he's really a different kind of player, and if he can go, then that certainly gives them another weapon and gives Ole Miss another giant headache to worry about.
For Ole Miss, would you say that this game has kind of you got a nothing to lose kind of feeling?
I think so. I mean, they've won enough to have stakes. They've got skin in the game. It's going to hurt if they lose, but if they win, they really enhance their playoff case. Still probably a long shot because their best path is to have Alabama lose a couple of games and win the SEC. But if they're sitting there, on that selection day with one loss, a win at Georgia, the only loss being in September on the road at Alabama, they've got a case. Because I was looking back and our research department came up with this. Since the playoffs started, no one-loss team with a road victory, I think, against a top 3 team, which, maybe you'd argue maybe Georgia won't be that, if Ole Miss were to win the game. But no one has a one-loss resume and a victory like that and has been left out. So they put themselves in pretty good shape to at least get in the mix on selection day, barring some type of upset after this, if they can win this game, regardless of whether they get to Atlanta.
You look at Georgia's defense without Jamon Dumas-Johnson. What do you see as the key for that unit going up against a explosive Ole Miss offense?
See if they can. They haven't gotten pressure the way they have in the past, but they have still been able to dial it up when they need it, which sort of shows what kind of dudes they have, right? So I think if they can keep Quinshon Judkins from kind of controlling the game, and then maybe force Dart into having to make some shot plays. That's how they'll do it. But the thing is, Kiffin and Weiss are going to have a trunk full of funk coming in, and they'll try to mess with their keys. And I think seeing if Ole Miss can get off to a fast start, and if Georgia can eliminate the fast start from Ole Miss's offense, and I think they'll be in good shape on Saturday.
You talked about the kind of unprecedented run Georgia's on right now, and for years it felt like as y'all went around the country, it's we want Bama. Are you starting to sense a little bit of a change there? We want Georgia?
I don't think there's any question that sentiment has changed in terms of who the top dog, no pun intended, is. But I mean, you're talking like a decade and a half of people getting used to making those signs. So it's almost like they write the "We Want Bama" sign and they go, "Oh yeah, no," and they put the X through it. And it was funny, but it's almost like that's. I mean, it's meant as a joke, crossing out Bama and putting "We Want Georgia," but it's almost like that the decade and a half stream of consciousness takes over. But I don't think there's any question right now that Georgia's in position where they're going to get everyone's best shot, because look, Ole Miss is good, and since Lane has been there, and even with Freeze a few years before, they've had a good program. They've won some games. They haven't won a game like this. They've never beat an AP number one team. I think when they beat Alabama a few years ago, they were number one in the coaches poll, but not in the AP. So they've never won a game like this, and it's an opportunity for them to really elevate the program. And when you are that standard, when people are trying to upset you and elevate their own program solely on the basis of beating you, that means you're the standard. And I think Georgia is. I don't think there's any question Georgia is right now.
I want to go back to the environment. You're talking about the atmosphere with game day here and campus and everything, but the actual game environment. Where's Georgia starting to stack up as far as the harshest places to play? I think we're all expecting tomorrow night to be really loud, maybe a little bit like last year against Tennessee.
Decibel level, light shows, a little different when we were here for Tennessee last year because it rained, but it was still intense. You could almost feel the intensity coming from the stands, and I think the team feeds off that. But that's sort of a two-way street. I think sometimes we get the perception that it's always directed from the crowd to the players, and they certainly do draw energy from it. But more often than not, it's going the other way. Those great players out there do something that excites those 100,000 people in the stand, and so it's kind of a circular thing. So I think that's what Georgia has going for it, is that they've always had great fans. It's always been a great place to play. But now they have this elite team, this dominant program, with players doing exciting things against big-time opponents. So players do something great, fans get excited. Fans probably set the stage early because they're excited in anticipation about the game. So it feeds on itself, and it makes it really, really difficult. And I think that because of the combination of the atmosphere and the players, it's not a tougher place to play. I mean, look, you can split hairs. Michigan's a hard place to play. Ohio State, Oregon, surprisingly. I know Georgia scoffed at it because of last year, but that's a hard place to play. Now, Washington's a really difficult place to play. Alabama's a tough place to play. But right now, because Georgia's been the best team, and they've got a great atmosphere, stadium's great. I still remember that night game against Notre Dame with the lights and everything. That was, it's a tremendous atmosphere, and it's a big advantage for them at home.
What's Georgia's biggest challenge right now?
Complacency, pressure. You always say the little cliches that coaches like, pressure's privilege and all of that kind of stuff. But there is a cumulative effect when you are expected to win, and you are expected to win every time, no matter the opponent, no matter the stage, no matter the situation, no matter if Brock Bowers is out. No matter if Dumas Johnson's out, doesn't matter. Georgia, you're supposed to win. And I think that can weigh on teams, particularly if a game gets close late. The good news is for Georgia, that's happened a few times this year, and they've answered the bell every time. So I think that shows a great deal of maturity. I think it shows that the coaching staff has done a good job in leading the players and alleviating as much of that pressure as they can. I mean, they made winning plays against Missouri Saturday when Missouri was threatening them. But I think that's the biggest challenge. I don't think, to be honest, that there's this big separation like there was last year. Maybe there wasn't a big separation between Georgia and Ohio State. And even though Michigan got upset, not really between Georgia and Michigan last year either. There was with TCU, clearly. But there was a separation. It felt like Georgia was the team. And I don't see that this year. They are certainly capable of winning it again. They may be the best team, but it's by this instead of this. And I think because of that, in the perception of the players sometimes and the fans, because you won 26 in a row, it's like, well, they'll never lose. And sometimes that can weigh on a team. And
what makes you say it might be the best team if the margin is so slim this year?
Well, I mean, they've got more good players. Their roster is probably better than anyone else's, at least all the way through guys that they can plug into play when they have injuries and so forth. But I don't think, for instance, I'm not trying to talk any junk. Georgia's not going to play its B- game, B or B- game, and beat those other elite teams. They're not going to beat Florida State with their B game. Not going to beat Oregon or Washington with it. They're not. Or Ohio State. Well, maybe Ohio State. Because Ohio State is great on defense this year, and offense is not what it was. But they'd be in danger with their B game against Ohio State. They're not beating Michigan with it. So, I think that's the difference, maybe, is the difference in the margin, is Georgia could kind of get away with maybe not its very best game, and they're still likely to win. There are more teams this year that can clip them if they don't play their A game. But if they play their A game, they're probably going to win.
Rece, is it fair to say that Carson Beck has a smaller margin for error than Stetson did, with the defense maybe not being as dominant as it's been the last 2 years?
That's a fair assessment. But I think one thing that people overlook is look at Georgia's stats on offense. Good night. They're really good, So the margin for everything is not like they're plodding along and trying to scratch out 23 points. They're putting points on the board. So, if you're saying, are there as many dynamic game wreckers, there may be, but proven dynamic game wreckers on the defensive side of the ball that can save you? Maybe it's not proven yet, but I think their offense is pretty stout right now. Their offense is capable of giving their defense a little margin for error if they needed to.
As you look at Carson, what stands out to you about him in his first year as a starter, and where do you stack him up against the other elite quarterbacks in the country?
Well, all you guys got mad at me, all you Georgia people, because I ranked Michigan #1 in the preseason, and all I said was I think they have the best roster. I just want to see the quarterback play. I just want to see the quarterback play, and he's shown me a lot. He's got great arm talent. He's got great moxie. I think he's proven to be a patient guy. He doesn't force a lot. He's got a little junk in his neck, as evidenced by the tackle against Vanderbilt after the interception. So he's got a little something to him. Being a proud Ponte Vedra Beach resident, Greater Duval area, that's how we roll down there. So Carson Beck's got a little something to him. So I think he's a very talented guy. Really nice arm, great size, can move enough, and is I think he's proven to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Do I think he's Drake May or Caleb Williams? I do not. Maybe in another year, maybe he's on the level of a J.J. McCarthy, who I'm very high on. I think he's really good. Michael Penix, who I think is a leading contender for the Heisman Trophy right now. All those guys are really good. Carson doesn't take a back seat to many. I would not put him in that caliber yet, but it's his first year. He's got some more time. Those guys improve too over the course of time. So he's got all the goods to be one of, if not the best quarterback in the country eventually.
On the other side of that, what does Jackson Dart?
This is gonna be the last question.
Okay.
How does Jackson Dart have to play tomorrow to go into Athens and come out with a win?
But by the way, I like Jackson Dart too. I love Jackson Dart at USC when he was a freshman. I was like, I saw him for the first time. I think it was Washington State. I think that he came in and I was watching the game. I can't remember who got hurt. Probably Slovis, but that doesn't matter. I'm rambling now. And I was like, that dude, he's got some skills and he's really thrived. He's taken care of the ball much better than he has. He can really run. He's got plenty of arm. He's in a great system for him. So I think he's got to make some shot plays, and I think he's got to run the ball. If he can move the chains, like when Georgia gets him into third down and they've got the perfect coverage called, and he gets out the gate and gets 9 when he needed 7, and they get going and the tempo goes. That's what he needs to do. He needs to keep the sticks moving, take care of the ball, and when the shot play opportunity's there, you got to be accurate. Can't miss it. He can't have Harris or whoever running with a step on the guy. He can't miss it. Got to hit it in this game like that. If he does that, they'll have a chance to pull the upset. All right, guys.